If you were told to keep your wedding low and simple, would you follow the advice, or would you want to please your mother and have an elaborate wedding? Sophia adjusted her wedding veil nervously as her mother fussed over her appearance, occasionally pausing to fix the intricate beads on the veil. The house was filled with chatter of relatives and the rhythmic drumming of traditional music coming from the courtyard. The air was thick with the scent of jollof rice and fried meats, and the yard was decorated with bright flowers and colorful fabric. Sophia's heart was heavy, despite the day being her wedding day. Smile, my dear. This is the happiest day of your life, her mother said, patting Sophia's cheek with a proud grin. Sophia forced a smile but couldn't shake the memory of her pastor's warning. Pastor Mark had told her during a counseling session, Sophia, I felt led to tell you to keep your wedding simple. There is a reason for this caution, though I don't fully understand yet, Pastor Mark said to her. She had shared the warning with her mother, but her mother had waved it off. Pastors will always say something to keep the cost low, her mother said. But this is my only daughter. I must let the world know how proud I am of you. Besides, God will protect you and Michael. Nothing will go wrong. Her phone buzzed on the bed beside her, and when she picked it up, she saw it was a message from Pastor Mark. Sophia, I have prayed about your wedding severally. Please keep it simple. God is warning you against making it elaborate. Sophia sighed, her heart heavy with conflict. Pastor Mark had been like a second father to her, guiding her spiritually since her teenage years. She trusted him completely, but her mother's words from earlier that day echoed in her mind. Sophia, her mother said firmly, I don't care what anyone says. You are my only daughter, and this wedding will be one for the books. Do you know how many people doubted I could raise you alone after your father died? This is my chance to prove them wrong. Mom, Sophia replied, hesitant. Pastor Mark said forget what Pastor Mark said. Mrs. Helen snapped. Is Pastor Mark going to feed us? Is he going to pay your bride price? I have spent my entire life working for this day. Please don't ruin it for me. Sophia had reluctantly agreed, even though a small voice in her heart begged her to stand her ground. The wedding day was a big and pompous ceremony. The church was decorated in bright colors, and a large crowd filled the pews, many holding small fans to fight off the heat of the packed space. Sophia looked radiant in her gown as she walked down the aisle with Michael, her husband, to be at her side. During the reception, guests flooded the dance floor, spraying money on the newlyweds as they danced. Sophia's mother beamed with pride, shouting instructions to the caterers and ensuring everyone was served. From a corner of the hall, Nana Ruth, Sophia's grandmother, watched silently. Her sharp eyes followed Sophia's every move. She approached the dance floor with a bundle of crisp new notes in her hand. God bless your home, my darling granddaughter, Nana Ruth said, as she sprinkled the money over Sophia's head. Sophia shivered slightly when her grandmother's hand brushed her forehead, but she quickly dismissed the feeling, attributing it to nerves. Michael noticed. Are you okay? He whispered. I'm fine, Sophia replied, forcing a smile. Later that evening, as the guests began to leave, Sophia noticed her grandmother again, sitting alone and muttering softly to herself. Grandma, are you all right? Sophia asked, kneeling beside her. Her grandmother looked up sharply, her eyes cold and calculating. Yes, I am fine. Go and enjoy your night, my darling. 3 months after the wedding, Sophia received shocking news. Her once thriving clothes business had burnt down. The news came as a devastating shock. Sophia, your shop is on fire. A neighbor screamed over the phone. What? Sophia exclaimed, grabbing a bag and rushing out of the house. When she arrived at the market, the scene was chaos. Flames consumed her shop, and firefighters struggled to contain the blaze. The charred remains of mannequins and fabric rolls littered the ground, a heartbreaking sight for Sophia. She fell to her knees, watching helplessly as years of hard work turned to ashes. Michael arrived moments later and pulled her into his arms. "We will get through this, my darling," he whispered, though his voice was trembling. 2 days later, they sat in their small living room, discussing their next step. "I don't understand how this happened," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "I always turn off everything before leaving." "Maybe it was an electrical fault," Michael suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "But why now? Why me? Why us?" Sophia asked, frustration mounting. As they tried to recover from the loss, Michael was summoned to his manager's office one afternoon. "Michael, Mr. Peters," his manager began, handing him a file. "There is a problem with the accounts. Several transactions are unaccounted for, and your name is linked to them." Michael's heart sank. "Sir, I didn't authorize any of these transactions." "There must be a mistake. Mistake or not, the board is taking this seriously," Mr. Peters said. "You will need to cooperate with the investigation." A week later, Michael was arrested on charges of embezzlement. Sophia was at home when she received a call from the police. "Your husband has been arrested," the officer informed her. "Arrested? For what?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. "Fraud. You will need to come to the station, ma'am, to get the full details of the crime." Sophia felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath her feet. She immediately called her mother. "Mother, Michael has been arrested," she cried. "What? Arrested for what? Arrested for what?" her mother asked, her voice filled with shock. "They are accusing my husband of fraud, but I know he's innocent," Sophia said. Her mother sighed deeply. "We need to pray, Sophia. The devil is at work." Sophia and Michael sold their home to secure his bail, moving into a cramped apartment in a rundown neighborhood. The apartment was a far cry from the comfortable home Sophia and Michael once called their own. As they stepped inside, the stale smell of dampness greeted them. The walls were cracked, the paint peeling in patches, and cobwebs clung to the corners of the ceiling. A single bare light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a dim, flickering light over the room. The only furniture they had managed to bring was their mattress, a battered wooden chair, and a few cooking utensils. Sophia set the small bag she was carrying on the floor and looked around, her chest tightening with overwhelming grief. "Is this really where we are going to live, Michael?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael closed the door behind him and leaned against it, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "It's all we can afford right now, Sophia. At least we have a roof over our heads." Sophia noticed a small puddle of water near the kitchen sink, likely caused by a leaking pipe, but she said nothing. She sank to the floor, covering her face with her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she sobbed uncontrollably. "How did we end up here? Everything was going so well. Why is this happening to us?" Michael knelt beside her and wrapped his arms around her. His voice broke as he tried to comfort her. "I don't know, my darling. I don't know why all of this is happening. But I promise you, We will get through this. God hasn't forgotten us. Sophia glanced at their faded wedding photo resting on the edge of the mattress, a painful reminder of what they had lost. Hasn't he? Sophia cried, pulling away to look at him. Her eyes were red and swollen. We have lost everything, Michael, my shop, your job, our house. We don't even have enough money to eat properly. Why would God let this happen? Michael was silent for a moment, his own tears falling freely. Maybe it's a test. He finally said, maybe God wants us to trust him, even in our darkest times. Sophia shook her head, burying her face in her hands again. I don't know if I have the strength to keep trusting God, Michael. I am so tired. Michael sat beside her on the cold, bare floor and held her tightly. Then lean on me, Sophia. When you are tired, I will be strong for us. We will pray, and we will keep believing. One day, this storm will pass. They sat in silence, holding on to each other as the weight of their reality pressed on them. Life in the cramped apartment was a daily struggle, with Michael still unemployed and Sophia unable to restart her business. They were forced to buy food on credit from neighborhood stores. Most days, they could only afford one meal, and even that was usually a simple dish of rice or beans. Sophia kept a small diary where she wrote down daily expenses and debts, hoping to maintain some semblance of control. That evening, as they lay on the mattress in the corner of the room, Sophia turned to Michael. Do you think this is our fault? Do you think we did something to deserve this? Michael stared at the ceiling, his face illuminated by the faint moonlight streaming through the window. I don't know, Sophia, but I don't think God is punishing us. Maybe there is something we are supposed to learn from all of this. Sophia sighed. I just want things to go back to the way they used to be. I miss our home. I miss the peace we had. Michael pulled her close, kissing her forehead gently. We will find that peace again, Sophia. I don't know when or how, but I believe God that we will. Just hold on a little longer. As the days turned into weeks, the couple clung to their faith, even as their situation grew more dire. Sophia began to wake up early in the morning to help her neighbors with house chores in exchange for small tokens of food or money. Michael took on odd jobs, from washing cars to helping at construction sites. One day, as Sophia returned from scrubbing laundry for her neighbor, she collapsed on the floor, exhausted and frustrated. The sunburn on her arms from working outdoors only added to her discomfort. God, why? She cried aloud, tears streaming down her face. Why are you allowing us to suffer like this? Have you allowing us to suffer like this? Have you forgotten us completely? Michael rushed to her side, lifting her off the floor. Don't say that, Sophia. God hasn't forgotten us. We are still alive, aren't we? That means there is still hope. But for how long, Michael? Sophia whispered, her voice broken. How long can we keep living like this? Michael hugged her tightly, whispering words of comfort, even though his own faith wavered. Together, they knelt on the cold floor and prayed, pouring out their hearts to God, begging for his mercies. Their voices echoed in the empty room, a desperate plea for deliverance. As they prayed, a faint breeze blew through the cracked window, carrying with it a glimmer of hope they couldn't yet see. Despite all these struggles, they were still battling infertility. One evening, as they sat in their living room, Michael broke the silence. Sophia, I now feel like something spiritual is behind all of this. What do you mean? She asked, her brow furrowed. Think about it. Michael said, everything started after our wedding. It's like we were cursed on our wedding day. Sophia shivered and instinctively rubbed her arms, though the room wasn't cold. Do you think it's true? Could someone have done something to us? I don't know, Michael replied, but we need to find out. Their search for answers led them to Pastor Mark. During a special prayer session, he called them forward and began to pray. Suddenly, he stopped and looked at Sophia. Sophia, your troubles began on your wedding day, he said. Someone sprayed you with cursed money. Sophia gasped. Cursed money. Who would do such a thing? Pastor Mark's expression was grave. I told you not to have an elaborate wedding, didn't I? It was someone close to your family. Someone who's to your family. Someone who harbored envy and bitterness for years. Let us pray for further clarity. As the prayer continued, Sophia's mind raced. Memories of her wedding day flooded back. The way her grandmother had stared at her, the way people had sprayed her with money, the gifts she received, the chill she felt when people's hands brushed over her forehead. She also remembered the odd way her grandmother had lingered by the gift table, almost as if inspecting every item that was brought forward. Could it be my grandmother? Could it be my mother's sister? Sophia whispered to herself. Michael noticed her pale face. What is it, Sophia? I am trying to think of who it could be. Is it my grandmother? She said hesitantly. You remember she was acting strange on that day, and she never liked my mother. She always favored my uncles and their families. Could she be the one? Pastor Mark looked at her and nodded. It's possible, but we need to confirm it through prayer. God will reveal the truth. The prayers continued for days, each session uncovering more. Finally, the truth was revealed. Nana Ruth, Sophia's grandmother, had indeed cursed Sophia's wedding out of jealousy. She couldn't bear to see Sophia's mother celebrate a grand occasion when her own favored children had struggled with misfortune. Sophia, Pastor Mark, Michael, and her mother burst into her grandmother's home to confront her. Grandma, why? Sophia asked, tears streaming down her face. Why would you do this to me? Her grandmother's face was stony. Do what? You know what I am talking about, Grandma. Don't pretend. Her grandmother responded. You don't understand, she said coldly. Your mother has always thought she was better than everyone else. She needed to be humbled. But at what cost? Mrs. Helen shouted, her voice filled with anger and pain. You ruined my daughter's life. And for what? Jealousy? Grandma said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. Pastor Mark intervened. There is no use in fighting. What's done is done, but God is merciful, and that is why he has revealed this to us. As he spoke, Nana Ruth's face softened, though she still avoided eye contact. With intense prayers and repentance, the curse was broken. The journey to redemption began. Sophia and Michael committed themselves to fasting and prayer, seeking God's intervention. Slowly, they began to see breakthroughs. Mrs. Helen, overcome with guilt for insisting on the elaborate wedding, supported them in every way she could. I am so sorry, Sophia, she said, holding her daughter's hand. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please forgive me. If I had known, I wouldn't have insisted on an elaborate wedding. I forgive you, Mom, Sophia said softly. We will get through this together. Months passed, and Sophia and Michael's resilience began to bear fruit. Michael finally received a job offer from an old friend who had started a construction company. Although the pay was modest, it was a steady income. Sophia, with the little savings they had managed to scrape together, reopened her business on a much smaller scale, selling provisions from a small kiosk near their apartment. One Sunday during church service, the pastor approached them after his sermon. Sophia, Michael, he said with a warm smile, God has not forgotten you. I have been praying for you both, and I believe the tide is turning. That week, a miracle happened. A wealthy woman who had been a loyal customer at Sophia's old shop saw her struggling in the kiosk and decided to help. She offered to invest in Sophia's business, giving her the capital to rent a proper store. Within weeks, Sophia's business began to thrive again, and old customers returned. Michael also received a promotion at his job after completing a major project. His boss, impressed with his dedication and hard work, increased his salary, allowing them to move out of the cramped apartment into a modest but comfortable home. Their joy doubled when Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The news brought tears to their eyes as they knelt down together, thanking God for restoring their lives. Months later, they stood in their new home, holding their newborn daughter. Sophia looked at Michael, her heart full of gratitude. We made it, my darling husband. God heard our prayers. Michael kissed her forehead like he always did. We just had to trust him through the storm. From that day forward, they lived their lives with renewed faith, treasuring the lessons they had learned and embracing every blessing with gratitude. Their trials had made them stronger, and now they walked into their future with hope. And so, Sophia and Michael's story reminds us that even in the darkest storms, faith and perseverance can lead to unimaginable breakthroughs. Their journey of trials, prayers, and redemption is a testament to the power of trusting God through life's challenges. As they emerged stronger and more grateful, they showed us that every struggle has a purpose and every setback can lead to a greater blessing. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this. Lena scrapes her beautiful melanin off her skin every night in order to get a lighter skin tone. You must be wondering why. Well, it started this way. Lena was born into a household where love was conditional and worth was measured by appearance. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okoro, were well respected in their Lagos community, but behind closed doors, their favoritism was glaring. Lena's dark skin was the source of their disdain, while her younger sister, Ada's lighter complexion, earned her unearned adoration. As early as age 6, Lena noticed the stark difference in how she and her sister were treated. When visitors came to their home, they would scoop Ada into their arms, peppering her with kisses and calling her our golden princess. Meanwhile, Lena sat quietly in the corner, clutching her doll, invisible to them. When they did notice her, it was often with sneering remarks. Ah, how come this one is so dark? Ada took all the beauty in the family. Her parents never defended her. Instead, her mother would shake her head, muttering, I don't know who you took after with this black skin. Every day in the Okoro household was a reminder of Lena's supposed inadequacy. Ada received the best of everything: the prettiest dresses, lavish birthday parties, and constant words of affirmation. Lena was often given hand. Me, Downs, clothes that were either too big or too small. On the rare occasion that Lena's birthday was remembered, it was marked with indifference, a small cake, and a dismissive, "don't expect too much." Lena's father was no better. He often called her Blackie as though it were her name, laughing as if it were a harmless joke. At family gatherings, he would proudly show off Ada to relatives, leaving Lena to fade into the background. During these gatherings, Lena would often help in the kitchen, overhearing the relatives talking about Ada's beauty and wondering why Lena didn't look the same. School, which should have been a refuge, was a continuation of Lena's torment. Her classmates were relentless, calling her names like monkey, charcoal, and black baboon. During roll call, they would snicker when her name was mentioned, and in group activities, she was always the last to be chosen. Her teachers, while not openly cruel, often overlooked her. On the rare occasion she performed well academically, her efforts were downplayed. Instead, the focus was always on her sister, who attended the same school and was adored for her angelic beauty. During lunch breaks, Lena would eat alone under the shade of a tree, far from the teasing and mockery. Sometimes she would bring a book and lose herself in stories that took her far away from her reality. But her solitude only fueled the rumors. Even in church, where she hoped for acceptance, Lena faced judgment. During Sunday services, other children were invited to participate in dramas or choir performances. Lena was often passed over, with the church elders commenting that her appearance might distract people. But during dramas that involved devils, monsters, demons, or blackness of the heart, Lena was always given the role. The drama coordinator would always say that she fits perfectly for the roles. The whispers from congregants stung the most, that child's darkness is too much. Lena learned to keep her head low, folding herself into invisibility, hoping to avoid their judgmental stares. As Lena grew older, her once scrawny frame blossomed into a lovely figure. She was tall, graceful, and poised, with a face that hinted at hidden beauty. For the first time, Lena saw a spark of possibility in her reflection. She began dreaming of becoming a model, imagining herself on magazine covers and runways. Modeling seemed like a way to escape her harsh reality, a chance to be admired rather than mocked. But even this dream was quickly dashed. At 19, Lena scraped together enough money to attend an open audition at a local modeling agency. Her heart raced with anticipation as she stood in line, surrounded by hopefuls. The waiting room was filled with beautiful girls, most of them light-skinned, chatting animatedly while Lena sat in silence, nervously tapping her foot. When it was finally her turn, the panel barely glanced at her before shaking their heads. The feedback was cutting. "Your skin is too dark for the Nigerian market. We're looking for someone with a more versatile look," they said. Lena left the audition humiliated, clutching her portfolio as tears streamed down her face. The rejection was not an isolated incident. Every agency she approached turned her away, citing her skin as the problem. By the time Lena entered her 20s, the rejection extended to her romantic life. Men rarely showed interest in her, and those who did treated her with disrespect. Her first boyfriend, Femi, seemed kind at first, but soon revealed his true colors. He often made backhanded comments like, "You're lucky I'm managing you. Most guys wouldn't date someone as dark as you." His words cut deeply, but Lena stayed desperate for affection in any form. Years of rejection, mockery, and self-loathing finally took their toll. One evening, after another modeling agency turned her away, Lena stared at herself in the mirror, her reflection blurred by tears. "I'll never be good enough," she whispered. "Not like this." Determined to change her fate, she resolved to bleach her skin, convinced it was the only way to gain acceptance. With every insult replaying in her mind, she began saving for the chemicals that would alter her destiny. Lena's journey into skin bleaching began with cautious optimism. With her first paycheck from a small administrative job, she purchased a popular bleaching cream from a local vendor. The vendor, a woman who had bleached her own skin to a pale complexion, assured Lena that the product was safe and effective. "Don't worry, my dear," the vendor said with a reassuring smile. "In a few weeks, you'll be glowing like the sun. People won't even recognize you." Lena started using the cream daily, slathering it on her skin in the morning and at night. The changes were subtle at first: a slightly lighter tone on her arms, a faint glow on her face. Encouraged, she invested in stronger products: whitening soaps, serums, and chemical peels. She often hid these products in her room, careful not to let her parents or sister see what she was doing. Within months, Lena's skin tone shifted dramatically. She stared at her reflection in awe, hardly recognizing the woman in the mirror. Her dark skin had been replaced with a lighter, more radiant complexion. The transformation was met with immediate results. Suddenly, the same people who had once ignored her began to take note of her. At work, colleagues complimented her. "Lena, you look so beautiful these days." On the streets, strangers called her Oyinbo, a term for light-skinned people, smiling warmly as she walked past. Lena soaked up the newfound attention like a sponge. For the first time in her life, she felt visible, worthy, and loved. With her lighter skin, Lena decided to revisit her dream of modeling. This time, the doors that had once slammed in her face swung open. At her first audition post, Transformation, the agency executives couldn't stop praising her. "You're perfect for our upcoming campaign. Your skin tone photographs beautifully," they exclaimed. Lena booked her first gig within weeks, a national campaign for a popular clothing brand. The photo shoot was a dazzling success, with Lena's image plastered on billboards across Lagos. More opportunities followed in rapid succession. International brands reached out to her, and soon she was flying to Paris, New York, and Milan for high-profile assignments. Lena became the face of luxury skincare products, clothing lines, and even a renowned jewelry brand. The money poured in, and with it came a life of luxury. Lena moved into a sprawling mansion in an upscale Lagos neighborhood, filling it with designer furniture and artwork. She bought cars, traveled the world, and adorned herself with expensive jewelry. Her success made her the toast of Lagos high society. Elite parties, red carpet events, and private yacht gatherings became her new normal. She mingled with celebrities, business tycoons, and politicians, The governor's son, Michael, was among her admirers. A charming and well-educated man, he pursued Lena relentlessly, sending her flowers, jewelry, and invitations to exclusive events. Lena's transformation also altered her relationship with her family. Her parents, once cold and dismissive, now treated her like royalty. Her mother would boast to visitors, "That's my daughter." The international model, her father often called her his pride and joy, showering her with praise at family gatherings. Even Ada, who had once reveled in being the favored child, now looked up to Lena with admiration and a hint of jealousy. Lena began to support her family financially, sending her parents money for a new house and paying for Ada's education. The same people who had once rejected her now depended on her generosity. With her newfound beauty came a flood of suitors. Men who had previously ignored or insulted her now vied for her attention. Businessmen, entertainers, and even foreign diplomats lined up to woo her. They showered her with gifts, from luxury handbags to exotic vacations. Among her admirers, Michael, the governor's son, stood out. He was persistent yet respectful, always finding ways to make her smile. He often took her out to dinners at upscale restaurants, where they would talk for hours, and Lena found herself opening up to him in ways she never had before. Lena's career reached its zenith when she won a prestigious international modeling award. Dressed in a stunning designer gown, she accepted the trophy with tears in her eyes, thanking everyone who had supported her journey. She felt invincible, as if she had finally silenced the voices that once called her ugly. Lena's life had transformed in every way. She was no longer the dark-skinned girl mocked and ignored. She was now a celebrated model, a wealthy philanthropist, and a sought-after woman. Lena's glamorous life began to crack when she noticed something strange. Her legs and arms started to swell. At first, she dismissed it as nothing serious, attributing the discomfort to exhaustion from her jet-setting lifestyle. She had been working non-stop, hopping from one modeling gig to another, attending exclusive parties, and maintaining her demanding schedule. When the swelling persisted for days, Lena assumed it was malaria. She bought medication from a pharmacy and continued pushing through her busy routine. However, the symptoms worsened. The swelling became more pronounced, and she began experiencing fatigue, headaches, and a persistent nausea that refused to go away. It was during a photo shoot in Cape Town that she collapsed. Alarmed, the crew rushed her to the hospital. Lena, still determined to downplay her condition, assured everyone it was just exhaustion. But after a series of tests, the doctor delivered devastating news. She had kidney failure. The words felt like a hammer to her chest. Kidney failure. How could that be possible? The doctor explained that her prolonged use of harmful bleaching agents had caused severe damage to her kidneys. You need a transplant as soon as possible, the doctor said gravely. Dialysis can only stabilize you for so long. The news of her condition spread quickly within her circle, but instead of rallying around her, the people in Lena's life began to disappear. Her so-called friends, who had once flooded her home with laughter and companionship, stopped answering her calls. Her suitors, who had once vied for her attention, ghosted her entirely. Even her family, the very people she had lifted out of poverty, abandoned her. Her parents, who had come to depend on her financial support, refused to help. When Lena suggested that Ada might be tested as a potential kidney donor, her mother exploded with anger. "Never!" her mother screamed. "I won't risk losing both of my children. You brought this upon yourself." From that day, her family stopped visiting her at the hospital. Alone, betrayed, Lena was left to navigate her illness without the support of the people she had loved and sacrificed for. The dialysis treatments were costly, and with no steady income, Lena's once flush bank account quickly dwindled. Her glamorous lifestyle crumbled before her eyes. She had to sell her mansion, her luxury cars, and her designer possessions to pay for her treatments. Each session of dialysis left her physically drained and emotionally shattered. The vibrant, confident woman she once was had become a shadow of herself. One evening, while scrolling through her contacts with trembling fingers, Lena hesitated before dialing Michael, the governor's son. He was one of the few people who hadn't outright abandoned her, but she felt ashamed to admit her dire situation. When he answered, his voice was warm and concerned. Lena, I haven't seen you in weeks. Are you okay at first? She tried to deflect his questions, but his persistence broke through her walls. Through tears, she confessed everything: her diagnosis, her financial struggles, and her feelings of utter hopelessness. Michael arrived at the hospital hours later, bearing fruit baskets and a comforting presence. Lena, overwhelmed by shame, couldn't meet his eyes. I just wanted to be beautiful, she sobbed. I wanted people to accept me. I never thought it would end like this. Michael took her hand, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Lena, your beauty was never in question. Whether you were dark or fair, you were always extraordinary. The people who made you feel otherwise were wrong. His words, so genuine and heartfelt, brought a sense of peace Lena hadn't felt in years. For the first time, someone saw her as more than her skin color or beauty. Without telling Lena, Michael spoke to her doctor and got tested as a potential kidney donor. Miraculously, he was a match. He immediately agreed to donate his kidney, but insisted on remaining anonymous, fearing that Lena might refuse his help out of pride or guilt. The next day, the doctor informed Lena that an anonymous donor had been found. Her relief was palpable. She called Michael to share the good news, but his number was unreachable. Lena couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the surgery ahead. The operation was a success. As Lena recovered, the doctor informed her that the anonymous donor wanted to meet her. Though weak, Lena insisted on being wheeled into the donor's room. When she entered, her breath caught in her throat. There, lying on the hospital bed, was Michael, smiling despite his pale complexion. "You," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do this for me?" Michael reached for her hand, his voice soft but firm. "Because I care about you, Lena. I've always cared." Overcome with emotion, Lena sobbed uncontrollably. For the first time, she felt truly loved, not for her appearance, but for who she was. Recovery from the surgery was slow but steady. As Lena regained her strength, she began to reflect deeply on her life and the choices she had made. The scars on her body were not just physical. They were reminders of years of self-doubt, pain, and the desperate measures she had taken to be accepted. With Michael by her side, Lena found a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to use her story and platform to advocate for self-love and acceptance. She started a campaign called In Her Skin, sharing her journey with young girls across Nigeria who felt pressure to conform to unrealistic beauty standards. Through her campaign, Lena held workshops in schools and community centers, teaching girls about the dangers of skin bleaching and the importance of embracing their natural beauty. Her vulnerability and honesty resonated with many, turning her pain into a source of inspiration. Lena also partnered with healthcare organizations to raise awareness about the harmful effects of bleaching products, becoming a voice for change in the beauty industry. Her efforts were met with widespread support, and she began to see a shift in societal attitudes towards skin color and beauty standards. Years later, on a sunny day, Lena sat on a beach with Michael and their twin daughters. The girls, a perfect blend of their parents, ran along the shore, their laughter filling the air. "Mommy, Daddy can't run!" one of the girls yelled, making everyone laugh. Lena watched her daughters, their dark skin shimmering under the sun, and felt a profound sense of peace. They would grow up in a world where their beauty was celebrated, not diminished. As Michael joined her on the beach blanket, he handed her a bottle of water and kissed her forehead. "You're glowing," he said with a smile. Lena smiled back, her heart full. "For the first time in my life," she replied, "I feel truly beautiful." Thank you for joining Lena's journey, a story of resilience, transformation, and the power of self-love. If this story moved you and you'd like to hear more, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more inspiring tales of strength and beauty. Until next time, remember that true beauty comes from within.